Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to, let me pause that. Welcome to Pirate Radio. I am your host, and I need no introduction because you all should probably know who I am at this point. And I think anybody who's watching this, instead of watching, well, I'm not going to tell you what else is on. Anyway, welcome. So, um, tonight's episode, whenever you're listening to this, if you're listening to it live, welcome. If you're listening to it later on, thanks for listening to it on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your crappier podcast. We're going to talk about the war machine and what that means to you. There's a lot of, I don't know, a lot of talk about the military industrial complex, but that's more of a, I don't know. I'll try to explain the best I can of what those two terms don't mean the same thing. But before I get going, I'm going to talk about the thing that I really don't like to talk about because it is some pretty big news, and that is the tiny little country over in the Middle East that's had a problem recently with a even smaller little, I guess, non-country little territory. And they have a ceasefire, or they had a ceasefire. I'm not sure where it's at this point. It's kind of touch and go. As far as I'm concerned over there, they're all kind of nuts and all kind of have a hair trigger on what they want to do and kill each other. Um, uh, anyway, like I said, I don't really want to get into that too much, but I did have some thoughts in the fact that they had a ceasefire and then the ceasefire broke because of, from what I understand, and it's part of why I hate talking about this is because you never can get a true fact out of the place. One is fog of war. Two is there's so much personal feelings involved in this, and then on top of that, there's a PR war that's being waged between both sides and what have you. And it's really hard to figure out what exactly is going on. But allegedly, the ceasefire was broken either because of one of two things or possibly both. That unexploded munitions was detonated by some Israeli soldiers, I assume Israeli soldiers, IDF, who were working like a piece of machinery trying to clear debris. Unexploded ordnance, they hit it, it went off. They thought it was an IED of some sort from Hamas. And so that kind of broke the ceasefire. But then also there were reports that Hamas was firing on IDF soldiers. I can understand a little bit of the fog of war with the shell going off, the unexploded munitions. You don't really know what's going on. And this is I've stole this term from Robbie the Fire Bernstein, but grace kind of needs to be extended in a scenario like this, in a situation like this, especially when you're talking about you're clearing an area that has been bombed, something goes off. Yeah, that's not a reason to start bombing again if you're Israel and the IDF and the Air Force and you start bombing again from the air. That's a little more fog of war. Let's find out. Let's pump the brakes. And I don't believe that they did that. But the other part was, let's say that Hamas soldiers or Hamas terrorist soldiers, whatever you want to call combatants, fired on some IDF soldiers. I can fully believe that. But also, since the very, very pro-Israel government IDF side wants to compare everything to World War II, let's do that. Let's engage in that World War II comparison. Let's say this is the end of World War II. We're in Germany, we're in Berlin, wherever, and some rogue outfit. We have a peace agreement. Germany has surrendered. The Nazis have been defeated. Hitler's gone, allegedly. But the war is over, and some rogue Nazis fire on some American soldiers, and then all of a sudden, or even British soldiers, just any ally soldiers, and then all of a sudden, that rogue group, since they fired on them, we gas up the B-29s and start hammering Dresden and Hamburg and Danzig and wherever again. That makes zero sense in anyone's mind. The same thing here. If you have a group of Hamas combatants or Hamas-like combatants, or maybe just some pissed off guys with AKs taking pot shots at IDF soldiers, I don't think that's reason to gas up the F-16s, 15s, F-35s, whatever you have, and start dropping ordnance on random places. I don't know. It's very weird. There's another part of this whole thing that before that happened when the ceasefire was in place, and there were videos out of Gaza of allegedly Hamas fighters executing other Gazans who were, I guess, allegedly were helping the IDF, were some sort of like pro IDF people, giving them aid, what have you, and they started executing them. You had a whole bunch of the Israel can do no wrong crowd, the Israel government can do no wrong crowd, back the IDF no matter what they do, who were like, oh, you see that? You see how bad they are? You see what they do? Conveniently forgetting that they were the same people who were saying that there is no such thing as a Palestinian and Hamas are the same thing. So I don't know. It's funny how much information you get about people when the shooting stops, because they very much seemed like they were ready to just keep it going. So, anyway, I'm going to stop talking about that subject because I don't really like it because it's a little too explosive. Both sides seem insane to me. I don't castigate the citizens or peoples, populace of either Gaza, West Bank, or Israel as being insane by and large, but there's a there's great fervor around it. So let's get back to the main thing, and that is the war machine. If you saw the picture before, I had LBJ, George W. Bush, and Barack Obama, all key elements of the war machine that was created post World War II. Hmm. Interesting how that works. Between NATO and the United States, we have been at war various times throughout the globe, a lot, with basically no enemies whatsoever. We had the Cold War in the Soviet Union, never really went hot against them, fought a bunch of proxy wars, lost most of them, but by and large have been very, very safe ever since the end of World War II. Yet, the war machine keeps going, it keeps expanding, it keeps doing all of the things that it didn't do before. There was no real war machine before. So, when I talk about the war machine, what am I actually talking about? I am talking about the military industrial complex, the Raytheons of the world, the kind of conspiracy, if you will, to always cause some sort of something around the world in which that place needs weapons that we then provide them money to then purchase, i.e., Ukraine. Um, what have you, whatever it is, that's the military industrial complex, always creating some sort of problem, lobbying, what have you, around the globe to spend money on weapons. And then we know what happens from there. The other part of this is the Fed, the Federal Reserve. None of this can happen without the Federal Reserve. And that's where the war machine really starts to affect the regular populace. It also affects us here in the United States because we have soldiers who go God knows where and are asked to do one of the toughest jobs in the world, not only physically, but especially mentally, and then come home with almost no assistance, almost a lot of times negative assistance from the VA, and be normal and lead a normal life and do all of the things. But when we get into the Federal Reserve and how it relates to the war machine, is you can't go to war without money, and you can't buy the arms, munitions, bombs, tanks, what have you, if you don't have some sort of money. Now, if you're going to ask the American people, hey, we need to go to war for the next 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, so we're going to raise your taxes, the American people are going to be like, yeah, I don't know. I think we're good. We're not going to raise our taxes. So, if you're the federal government, where are you going to get the money? Well, you're just going to allocate the money. You're going to spend the money. You didn't bring it in. We've been running deficits for ever at this point, and we're running $1 trillion deficits now. Just saw a statistic that we put another $1 trillion on our debt faster than we ever had before, including COVID. That's insane. It took less than a month to add another trillion, so we're $38 trillion in debt. So yay us. One of the things that's really hard for a lot of folks to understand, and I didn't really understand it until recently, is where does the money come from? Okay, because I think most of us, even though we understand that the gold standard is gone, long gone, it was killed forever under Richard Nixon, but it was, in essence, gone before that under FDR. But we know that the gold standard doesn't exist. So we know that our money is not backed by a physical thing. There's not 1 ounce of gold equals $1. That's not a thing. And anyone who still believes that, sorry, we'll have a different conversation. But so what backs up our money? Nothing. At this point, it's a military. Our military might is basically what backs up our dollar. So, where does money come from? Money is just printed. And you say, well, money is just printed. Now it's just created out of thin air whenever someone needs it. This is very difficult to understand. I'm going to try to explain it. I had a ground floor view of a lot of this. And money is not created necessarily like you think. Even if you're familiar with the Fed and what they do, they don't just allocate money willy-nilly. Now, if the government says if Congress passes a spending bill, that's a different story. Under COVID, that was a different story. But here's how it all works, though, even with like the COVID bailout stuff. And this even pertains to the 2008, 2009 TARP bailouts, which went directly to the banks. Everything is going to go through a bank. The Federal Reserve does not lend anyone one single dollar. What they'll do is, if you've ever gone and gotten a car loan, I think most people, this is where I had the ground floor view of, I worked in the car business for a long time. I didn't necessarily, I guess I did. No, I didn't necessarily write the loans. I was the middleman. And then basically, if you came into a car dealership, I would pull your credit. I would submit it to the lender. I would prepare all the paperwork. I would get everything ready. I was the middleman who basically was just selling the paper off to a lender. Okay. So here's how that works. There is no, let's say you come in and buy a car and your loan is for $30,000. No one ever takes $30,000, transfers it to a bank who then transfers it to a car dealership. That's not how it works. What happens is the Federal Reserve never really gets involved. So if your Bank of America is who your loan is through, Bank of America just gives us $30,000 as the car dealership, which we then use to pay whatever we're going to pay. It never really existed. There's not $30,000 sitting in some vault of Bank of America that's earmarked for customer A who bought a Ford F-150. That doesn't exist. Yes, I know Ford F-150s are way more than $30,000, but shut the fuck up. We're just talking here. There is no $30,000 sitting somewhere. This is not a casino where they have to have enough coin on hand to cover any potential loss in a day. That's not how it works. It's not how any of this works. That's why if you walk into a bank and you try to withdraw $30,000 that you have, most often they're going to tell you, come back tomorrow or in a week. We don't have it. They might tell you they don't have it, but they're going to have some sort of form or paperwork or process of why they don't have the money, why they can't give it to you right then and there. Now, they might write you a check. They might do a wire transfer, but they're not going to give you $30,000 cash. Not without some sort of something from the setup or a plan or some sort of appointment. They're not going to do it because they can't do it because they don't have it because they never had it. Banks don't actually have money. They take deposits. They don't really give out money, especially large sums of money. If you go get 100, 500, 1,000, whatever, not a big deal. But so many of these laws exist. We all know that you can't, if any transaction of, I think it's 5,000 now, but common law is any transaction of $10,000 or more is going to be accompanied by some paperwork and all kinds of things, and they're going to investigate you because it's to prevent drug trafficking. Yeah, well, that's how you can sell it to the American people, but that's not really what it is. It's there as a check and a balance to protect the bank and the Fed. That's why it's there. That's why $10,000 has all kinds of things behind it. So all of this kind of comes together to feed the machine, the war machine. because your money doesn't mean anything. It's backed by nothing, nothing physical, nothing tangible, and it doesn't really exist. So every time you borrow money, you're actually creating some form of inflation within the monetary cycle. And if you're not familiar with inflation, you need to get familiar with inflation. And inflation really only exists on the money supply. So this will feed everything. So when we talk about what the Federal Reserve does in regards to the military industrial complex and the war machine, we might sit there and say that, oh, I'm not in Afghanistan. I don't have any family members in Afghanistan. Yes, I know Afghanistan is not still going on, but we're going to use that war anyway. So this doesn't really directly affect me. Yes, I feel for those soldiers and I wish our country wasn't at war in Afghanistan, but how does this directly affect me? There's how it directly affects you. Because your money supply gets expanded to pay for the war. All of this gets created. Then we go and cut the interest rates, and boom. Now we have even more money supply because people go buy things on borrowed money, which creates more, just more of the money supply. It didn't really exist. It's not backed by anything. More inflation. You know, you sit there and you wonder, like, why does, like I mentioned before, an F-150, you know, I don't know what the average price is, but I believe it's well over $50,000 for a brand new F-150, which is way more than it was 10 years ago and way more than it was 20 years ago. And you ask, well, why is that? Oh, well, it's all the technology in the vehicle. Well, technology gets cheaper over time. That's why I have LED TVs everywhere, flat screen televisions. You all have flat screen televisions. I have a camera here, a desktop. This whole setup that I'm recording this on is like less than $500, 600, somewhere in there. So you're going to tell me that because there's more technology in a vehicle, they got more expensive? No, that doesn't make sense. The reason vehicles and houses and everything you borrow money on has gotten more expensive is because you're borrowing money on it. You're creating wealth out of nothing. If that $30,000 you needed for that loan actually existed and there was a finite amount of money and it had to be transferred from the Fed to the bank to you or to whoever you bought the vehicle from, then that would be a hell of a lot more problematic and it would cut down on the cost of things because the money supply is this big, not infinite. And all of this feeds into the actual war machine because there is no accountability for Congress because they play the fear game. You know, we had to bomb Iran because they might launch a nuke that they didn't have and hit the United States, but that they can't hit with a nuke that they don't have, that they're not seeking, but this is for our safety somehow. Okay, so that makes zero sense, but still a lot of people bought it. And now we start seeing this whole thing happen again. And no one's talking about this, no one at all. Everyone was completely enamored by the fact that they demolished a ballroom of the White House, but both sides were arguing over the White House construction project, and none of them are talking about Venezuela. Why are we not talking about Venezuela and the fact that we are on the brink of a regime change war with Venezuela? Now, how in God's name are you going to launch a war against Venezuela when you're $38 trillion in debt? How does that work? Where's the money going to come from? I mean, the government is shut down. Soldiers aren't being paid, but we're moving assets into theater against Venezuela and we're blowing up drug boats of Venezuela, which they very well may be drug boats. Whatever. How are we going to war while also notice the timing of a lot of this. I don't know what's going to happen in Ukraine other than we're going to keep cutting checks. We need to stop that. But I see no real end in sight with that deal. But all of a sudden, Israel and Gaza have a ceasefire, shaky as it is, probably going to hold up. And all of a sudden, the saber rattling towards Venezuela gets really, really, really loud. What threat is Venezuela to the United States? Can anyone tell me? What threat is Venezuela to any of its neighbors? Not that we should really care, but if you can't even do anything to your neighbors, how are you going to come and do anything to the United States? I would assume that Venezuela has what they call an air force. Um, I don't know what planes they're flying. I don't know how good they are. Um, but we're going to go to war with Venezuela? Over what? Is it oil? There is kind of a conspiratorial part. Not only is it oil, but they have a very hard crude oil in Venezuela that needs to be cut by lighter crude oil, from what I understand. No oil expert, but the Googles can get you up to speed somewhat on that. So maybe it's a way to, I don't know, supplement our oil industry. And now I see people talking about the Monroe Doctrine. All of a sudden, the Monroe Doctrine has been resurrected. And if you're not familiar with the Monroe Doctrine, it's from President James Monroe. Is he fucking president? Yeah, he was a president. And the idea was to control your area around your country, and any other power was to stay out. Now, there's talk of the Chinese have been moving into South America, this, that, and the other. And I'm sure that they are, and I'm sure that they have. In what capacity, I don't really know. But it's almost like too little too late here. Um, Venezuela. What did Venezuela ever do to anybody? Yeah, they're communists and they have a dictator. So does China. Are we going there? So does Brazil, kind of technically right now. So does a lot of places. Are we going to regime change them? I mean, I don't understand. I do understand. Apparently, Venezuela has F-16s. That's pretty formidable. It's one badass plane. They probably don't want to lose the F-16s. So any sort of engagement will be pretty quick, and you probably lose one, and then they turn and run. I mean, if you want to live, that is. I mean, it's just like the Iranians having F-14s. It didn't work out very well for them. I know it's an obsolete platform, but hey, I don't even think they scrambled them. They got scrambled on the ground, but I don't know. The timing of the ending of one war and the potential start of another one, just like, when Afghanistan, we had the pull out of Afghanistan, and then the $10 billion that we should have been saving all of a sudden went right to Ukraine. So that's weird. So I guess our government thinks we're that stupid. Are we that stupid? Are we that malleable? Are we able to be that coerced? Or are they just all a bunch of boomers that don't understand that, like, Fox News or CNN is garbage? Like, do they just not get that anymore? Maybe it's the same reason they don't really understand that support for Israel since October 7th has just plummeted. I saw a statistic that prior to October 7th or right thereafter, it was like plus 48 in favor, with a favorable view of Israel and the Israelis. And now it is a +1 favorability of the Palestinians. Something in that's a 49-point swing. I don't care what you're talking about. 49-point swings are insane. It's insane. So these are the same people that seem not to understand that that are trying to tell us that Venezuela is some sort of threat, or that we must protect the Ukraine at all costs. Are we still doing this? Are we still talking about Ukraine and how we have to do anything there? Why can't we just say, you know what, we're done. Good luck. Figure it out, or get killed. We're just going to keep doing this. This just tells you that the war machine has to keep going. It just has to keep going. We can talk about any number of lobbies or people or things or pet projects or this, that, or the other. Insert country here: Ukraine, Israel, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, whatever. Insert any country you want here. This really comes down to just the perpetual machine of war, and the war machine has to keep going. I don't understand why it has to keep going, which is not true. I do understand why it has to keep going, because that's the only thing backing up the American dollar at this point. Muammar Gaddafi wanted to get off the petrodollar, and that did not work out really well for him at all, did it? He got bayoneted, I guess, in a very, very particular place. So instead of having a sound currency backed up by a physical asset like gold, we just back it up with military might. This can't last, guys. This cannot last. This whole saber rattling and invading countries and bombing countries can never, ever, ever last. We just keep going. We keep getting further and further in debt. This is not going to work. At some point, Donald Trump has been in office now for, 9 months? I don't see the economy getting any better. I really don't see that it's gotten any better. I don't really see that it's gotten any more stable. We just had a point shave by the Federal Reserve chairman, who's as inept as they come. I just see prices going up. Oh, and now we're spending like $40 billion to bail out Argentina. So I guess Javier Milei failed. We can talk all the things we want to talk about, how great he did this, he did that, he slashed this, he slashed that, and now we had to spend $40 billion or something to stabilize their currency. I mean, at least we didn't invade. It's a hell of a lot cheaper than trying to regime change or stabilize with your military, but I guess we're going to do that in Venezuela. I don't understand any of this, of why we have to keep doing this. I don't understand how the average American just doesn't really get, like, we have no appetite for war, yet we're in places all over the globe blowing stuff up, stacking bodies, dropping bombs. How many people actually has any clue that we're in Somalia and have been for 20 years bombing the place? Why the hell are we in Somalia? What is in Somalia that benefits us at all? All the times the Somalis have attacked us. They did the one pirate run the one time. We stacked 3 or 4 bodies, and that was it for them. They're like, not doing that. We're everywhere. We're everywhere. Why are we in Saudi Arabia? Why are we still in Germany? Why are we still in Japan with bases all over the place? Why are we in these places? I don't understand how this can possibly keep going with nothing but bullets and bombs to back up our dollar, while we're spending it all overseas and in places none of us ever want to go, have ever been, and if you have, you never want to go back. Yet we're spending all of this money in all of these places, and our cities are falling apart. So we have to just keep this whole war machine perpetually in motion for what? For what? And I see people freaking out. Oh, the government is shut down, and the SNAP benefits are going to go out on the 1st. Good. I'm sorry, but good. Watch unemployment drop to negatives. I just, like, that's the other part, is you have these entitlements that are set up forever, that are never going away. Our money is basically worthless at this point. The only people who notice this are the people in the middle, like myself and a lot of people that are commenting and watching this. I know a lot of you guys personally. We're the ones getting screwed here. Our dollars that we save are getting cut in half and in half and in half and in half all of the time. And you basically just have to go buy stuff. But where most of us are not in a position to continually keep buying things because we're tapped out. We're completely tapped out. I feel like, and I hate to say that term, I feel like, but I'll put it this way. I believe our economy is on the brink. I really do. I don't see it getting any better. I don't see that the confidence is there. And all of the measures that we use are antiquated and retarded. The stock market has zero bearing really on the economy. It is zero. It's a statistical zero at a measurement of the health of an economy. It is. Whether it's up or down, it really doesn't matter. The stock market is nothing more than a judge of how well your borrowed money is doing. That's all it really can tell you. I don't see, and then like the CPIs of the world or the GDP. Oh, our GDP is this. The GDP matters zero to all of us in our daily lives, in our yearly lives. It matters zero. We talk about a GDP. It's all just a distraction to debt and the debt crisis that we find ourselves in because we're funding all of this war and wars that we're in and wars that we support all over the globe. We print the money, we send it to Ukraine. Ukraine then uses it to buy weapons, or we send it in the form of weapons that we used borrowed money to buy and to store, and we send it there, and then we'll send the money that they used to buy weapons, then we'll send these weapons in our stockpiles, and like, oh man, the stockpiles are low. We better get more Tomahawk missiles. So guess what? We spend more money getting more Tomahawk missiles so they can sit there and do nothing until we need to go to war for some random regime change against some douchebag in a boa that's yellow and green and or yellow, red, and blue named Maduro so we can put some tomahawks on his house or something. I don't know. I just know that going to war with Venezuela is retarded. Going to war with drug cartels is retarded. And if you were going to go to war with drug cartels, you should probably start in Mexico. But hey, what do I know? This whole idea of we're going to go to war with drug cartels, boy, that sounds good on the surface, doesn't it? So we're going to blow up drugs. Okay, can we start at Pfizer? Or any number of these other ones that I see all the advertisements for every time I watch a goddamn football game or a baseball game? Can we start with those? Can we blow them up first? Is that possible? Because that's where it starts. This whole thing, reactionary bullshit of we're going to stop the drug smugglers. First of all, you're not. Second of all, maybe we should address the problem here. Maybe, just maybe, we should look inward. A reflection upon ourselves as a country and a society. Maybe we start here first. Maybe we actually decide we want to have a culture again. An American culture. Not some sort of like melting pot bullshit made up thing. Maybe we just have an American culture where we're all Americans. There are not Native Americans. There are not African Americans. There are not European Americans, Eskimo Americans, alien Americans, whatever. There are just Americans. Non-hyphenated, straight up Americans. I don't care if you're wearing a turban on your head or a sheet on your ass. You're just an American. Maybe we start there with our own culture. And once you have a shared American culture, perhaps you can get all of your citizens on board, or at least a majority of them, so they're not on fucking drugs, laying in the street, shooting up, smoking whatever, crack, meth, any number of things, with a shopping cart full of random shit and stuff they stole next to a bunch of pieces of plywood that they've somehow nailed together and are homeless. Yet I don't know about that term, because if you have plywood nailed together, you kind of have a home, you're just addressless. So there's that part. Maybe we focus on ourselves and getting our culture back and getting people off the goddamn street instead of blowing up boats in some random ocean, God knows where, while we talk about another regime change war against a country most people can't point to on a map that is massive and a jungle and full of people we don't give a shit about. And before we go in there and just start murdering tens of thousands of innocent civilians who get caught up in a war, maybe, just maybe, we focus on our own country. Maybe for just 10 seconds, we address the problems here. Oh, but Trump's deploying the National Guard to different cities, and they're fighting him tooth and nail on it. How did we get here? If you think that sending the National Guard to a bunch of blue cities is going to change anything long term, you've lost your fucking mind. It's not going to change anything long term. They're going to fight him tooth and nail. Yes, he might clean it up for the next 30 days, 3 years, whatever, but it's never going to work out long term because our culture is dog shit right now. Our shared culture in the United States is fading, and it's fading fast. It is not a brown issue, a yellow issue, a white issue, a black issue. It is an American issue. We have to be Americans. This whole thing of like us versus them is never going to work out for the citizens in the country. It's going to work out for politicians. It is never going to work out long term for us, because what you get with the us versus them is you get a left versus right. Left versus right. It's wings of the same damn bird. When they line up on an issue like Venezuela or Ukraine, you should question that instantly of, wait a minute, I thought they were against each other. The only thing that happens with an us versus them, a left versus right, is you get all of these people like the Ted Cruzes and the James Langford idiots of the world who go up there and say, I'm a conservative, I'm for the GOP. And they go, oh, we can't do this budget because the Democrats want to spend $10 billion or $10 trillion, whatever it is. And they go, we can't do that. We got to shut the government down. That's fine. Keep it shut down. All they end up doing, the conservatives, the fiscal conservatives like James the Pussy Langford, all they end up doing is going, instead of, well, guys, you don't understand. We had to pass this spending bill to get the government back on board to get soldiers paid, because you like soldiers, right? So they play on that bullshit. And we have to fund the government because we can't have people out there starving to death because of their SNAP benefits and their Social Security and their health care. My health care. Now you sound like Bernie Sanders, James Langford, you dickhead. So now, instead of $10 billion, they go, look, guys, or $10 trillion is what the figure I should be talking about. He'll go, guys, we're not spending $10 trillion. Look, we got them down to only 8. James, we don't have $8 trillion. We don't. That's not a win, douchebag. That's like, look, this guy was only going to shoot me 10 times. I got him down to only shooting me 8. Maybe you should get the gun from him so he can never shoot you. You know, maybe actually wield power instead of this whole fake nonsense bullshit. But this is what happens when you don't have a shared culture. You can be divided like this so easily. He does the little Fox News hit where he talks about, oh, I'm a conservative and I'm a Christian and I'm this and I'm that. All the while, he's got the skeleton in the closet of a deposition he had to do at his Falls Creek family-owned church camp, in which in that deposition, because they had an alleged rape that happened, they deposed him as the director, in which he was asked, can a 13-year-old consent to sex? Which he kind of sat there and went, yes, I believe they can. Great. Does that sound conservative to you? Does that sound Christian to you, that a 13-year-old can consent to sex? Not me, because if they can consent to that at 13, what else can they consent to at 13? I don't know. Maybe a transition from Johnny to Sally or Sally to Johnny. Man, he's a conservative, just like Ted Cruz. He's a conservative, America first, unless it's Israel. He literally sat there with Tucker Carlson. Ted Cruz sat there and said he ran for Senate because he wanted to protect Israel. He doubled down. Then they'll come out and they'll castigate other people who are truly America first. Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz. I'm sorry, I'm probably leaving a whole lot of people out. Rand Paul, Ron Paul. I know Ron Paul's not in politics anymore. But all of these people get dragged through the mud of being all of these labels that they're not by people who are some of the worst people on planet Earth. Ted, I was born in Canada Cruz. He's not a Texan, he's a Canadian. No offense to any Canadian fans I might have, but fuck him and go Dodgers. Anyway, we have this. You'll notice you get these guys doing the Fox News hits, doing all these little things, getting the complete us versus them thing, while you know for a fact, you have to know that they're sitting in behind closed doors somewhere at a bar, at a restaurant, in the Senate, in the Congress, in the Capitol, wherever, sitting back laughing, smoking a cigar, cashing the check, doing all the things, just laughing like hyenas because they got all of us snowed, because they've divided us, they've got us looking through the world at an us versus them lens, and we don't even see that the war machine keeps going, and that's what's causing all of us to lead a lesser life. That's what's causing all of us, when we drive through any major city, we see homeless transients yelling at street signs with one shoe on, sweating to death, and it's only 35 degrees outside, higher than a kite, dirtier than hell, with a shopping cart full of shit they stole or collected, what have you, all terrorizing any average citizen in a park or a downtown area. And we let this go on. Why? Well, we don't have enough money for the services. That's a lie. Well, we don't have enough money for more cops. That's a lie. Well, we don't have money for this, that, or the other. Our education is bad because we don't have enough money. That's a lie. We constantly are lying. We're playing a left versus right game, and we all keep losing. We're all divided because we don't have a shared culture that's calling this out like we should be calling it out. We should be able to go, you know what? None of our kids are going to go fight and die in some sand trap for some bullshit that was a lie. Let's go look back at all the lies I was told in my time on this earth from when I can remember. First Gulf War, a lie. It's all based on a lie. Did we win? Sure. Did we win in the long run? No, we didn't. All based on a lie. All based on lies. I'll let you look that one up if you want. Somalia, lie. Not really a war necessarily, but Ruby Ridge, lies. Waco, lies. How do those play in? Well, those agencies have a budget, and the budget goes up whenever they have to do things. So there you go. Part of the war machine does include the FBI, the CIA, the ATF, the DEA, okay? All part of it. Kosovo, lie. Afghanistan, lie. 9/11, part of Afghanistan. A lot of lies around it. Yes, the planes hit buildings. Not getting into that right now. But Afghanistan, lie. Should have been out of there in 2 months, max. Absolute lie. Iraq War II, lie. Let's see. The housing bubble, lie. All built on lies, all built on falsehoods, all built on fake shit. Absolute lie. Syria, lie. Libya, lie. Everything, Ukraine, lie. It's an absolute lie. Iran, it's a lie. They're just lying to us. They're constantly lying to us. It's the same lie over and over, repackaged in a different way. It's just like, you know, you cook a ribeye, or not a ribeye, a prime rib today. Okay, great. Tomorrow you have maybe a little more ribeye. Then you cut it up and you serve it as a soup. Then you cut it up and you serve it on a salad. It's still ribeye, or it's still prime rib. They're just packaging it different and serving it to you in a different way. It's still a goddamn lie. Every damn thing has been a lie from the federal government about any sort of war or any sort of police action within the United States has all been lies. It's all a complete lie. It's all part of the us versus them, funding the war machine, funding the Fed, letting the Fed do all of the things that they do, run over the top of us, all of us much poorer. We might have nice lives and not suffer for things, but we are much poorer than we should be, without a doubt. The fact that the chasm between someone who's on benefits making in the neighborhood of $25,000 to a person who's working 40 hours a week and making $35,000 to $40,000, there should be a much larger chasm there from someone who doesn't have a job versus someone who's working 40 hours a week. There's no chasm there. Okay. We talk about we want to pay teachers more and all of this bullshit. Are we going to get a better product out of it? Probably not. Should we pay teachers more? I don't know. We can debate that till the cows come home. But you can't pay teachers more when you're fighting wars God knows where, or you're propping up dictators, or you're paying people to fight wars other places. As the war machine keeps growing, we're all going to hurt more and more and more. So how do we fix this? One, try to get a culture, try to educate, your fellow citizens and friends and things like that. Have those conversations. Have the uncomfortable conversation at Thanksgiving, which is coming up, about our national debt. Have the uncomfortable conversation about, I understand, we like Israel. They're an ally. We don't need to keep sending them money. We don't. Especially sending them gobs of cash to wage wars against a captive population. And we certainly don't need to be gassing up all the tanks to invade fucking Venezuela. I don't understand that. Or we don't need to be bailing out Argentina, our long forever ally, Argentina. Said no one ever. If Javier Milei's that good, he'll figure it out. He will figure it out. Don't know exactly what's happening in Argentina. You know why? Because I don't fucking live there. I'm not going to visit there. I don't care to be there. They are no threat to my country. They are no threat to me and mine or anyone that I care about. Sorry. That's how the world works. There's a country called Gabon. Probably 99% of you can't find it on a map. And you should care about Gabon as much as you care about Venezuela or Argentina. Zero. Because you don't live there, your family ain't there, and you ain't going there. And we certainly shouldn't be shaking down the middle class in form of tax money. And when you don't get the tax money you need, just printing it, quantitative easing, and sending it to some hellhole halfway around the world. Why would we do that? All while our jobs, manufacturing jobs, any number of different jobs, are either offshored or we're bringing in a whole bunch of guys with towels wrapped around their heads and dots on their foreheads to call themselves Bob and drive large semis into parked cars with a fake license with no surname on it. I don't understand why there's not a bigger outcry. Any number of these things can be solved basically overnight. And any governor I see that... So in the state of Oklahoma, our governor has taken some direct actions recently, and he catches all kinds of hell for it. He doesn't seem to care, which is fantastic. But he catches all kinds of hell for it. He said that we're not going to have truck drivers driving through our state with these just given out driver's licenses with no surname on it. Good. Get them out. They shouldn't be driving through here, hired in a kite or staring at their phone, running into people. We had an accident here in Oklahoma, I don't know, a year ago, in which it's like 4:30 in the morning. There's no one on the road. It's a 6-lane highway, and you have a UPS double trailer truck, which experienced some sort of failure and is trying to get off the road but can't. He's on a grade, so he's got his flashers on, and they got video of this whole damn thing. It's not daylight yet. He's got the flashers on. It's a well-lit road. There's no other cars. He's in the middle lane, and some Jeep in a damn semi plows smooth into the back of his back trailer, skids off the road in a ball of flames. He and another Yeet die. They burn to death. I don't know. Seems like you'd see the semi in the middle of the damn highway with its flashers on and avoid it, slow down, whatever. He didn't do that. Maybe those guys shouldn't be driving 60,000-pound trucks or whatever they weigh across the United States. Maybe some old boy who grew up in Alabama or Mississippi or Oklahoma or Arkansas, who just wants to see the open road, gets CDL and drives cross country and earns a good wage. He can have bad credit. It's fine. Most of them do. It's fine. They will pay their bills eventually. They're going to have an ex wife or two. She burned him down. It's fine. He's living the American dream. You know what? He's got his big rig. He drives cross country, you know, honks the horn. He's got the dog in the cab with him because, the wife's gone. So he's got his dog. It's great. The old snowman is gassed up and he's moving. The bandits behind him. And we got to get this Coors across this state. But no, he can't. Because some guy with the towel wrapped around his head and a dot on his forehead driving into other people as they're parked on the damn highway because something's going on. Kills 3 people. Cool. Glad we had that happen. That's awesome. Don't focus on that. We should focus on the Argentina with the rare earth minerals, according to Merck here. Why put this back up. Why does it always come back to rare earth minerals? Why is that always the thing? Why? This is the new oil? I mean, why? Didn't Afghanistan have rare earth minerals? Doesn't all these other places have rare earth minerals? They're probably in Africa. We won't even talk about Africa. I mean, it's always rare earth minerals. We have a fucking space program, and allegedly all of these rare earth minerals are on these like comets and asteroids and shit. Let's go grab one. What are we doing? We went to the moon. Allegedly. What the hell? Yeah, I did go full Oklahoma. I've met a few truckers, buddy. That was, I know some truckers. Went full Oklahoma at the end of the truck driver thing. Yeah. No offense to truckers, man, but I met some. Good old boys. Like their mashed potatoes and gravy and a chicken fried steak. And they know where the best one is, but they've been through some stuff. Maybe get a roast beef open face sandwich. They know where a good one is. Up there in Big Cabin. Go up there. That's a good point right there, Jake. Assume you're talking about the rare earth minerals and China's buying it all up. Why don't we buy it all up? Or if at least we're going to invade, can't we get them before we leave? Tuck tail and run? Maybe we could use rare earth minerals and magnets to back up our currency. That's a thing. I heard an interview with a guy, I can't remember his name, who was talking about gold and gold reserves and this, that, and the other. And his belief is that China actually has more gold than the United States. They just haven't said it yet. That's a scary thought. That's really scary. If we lose the dollar as the reserve currency around the world, it becomes a real problem real quick. Like overnight becomes a problem. A problem none of us ever want to face. None of us have ever faced, actually. None of us even know truly what that means. Other than it's going to get real bad real quick. Real bad real quick. That's a scary thought. But, let's not worry about our currency. Let's not worry about our debt. Let's not worry about our homeless problem. Let's not worry about the infrastructure of our cities. Let's not worry about any of those things. They're not a problem because Venezuela and drugs or something. None of those things matter because there's rare earth minerals somewhere on Earth and we don't control it. Let's not worry about any of those things, our lack of a shared culture, the fact that we're at each other's throats with an us versus them strategy, the fact that no one wants to be a cop anymore because we hate the police. Let's not worry about that Antifa is out there doing the things they're doing. I'm not sure who they are, but they seem to be causing a whole lot of problems. Let's not worry about any of those things because over in Iran, they chanted death to America. And they're this close to a nuclear weapon, guys. We promise. We really mean it this time. WMDs. That's another really stupid saying that we all kind of fell for. Weapons of mass destruction. That's really vague. Because define mass destruction. The destruction of mass or the destruction of a mass of people? And what's a mass of people? Because, like, if you look up the definition of riot, a riot involves, like, I think it's three or more people in a melee event becomes a riot. Most people probably think that a riot involves like a dozen people, but legally it's just like three people. So is that like, so they'll tell us, okay, a mass casualty event is in a neighborhood basically of three or more people if it involves a gun. Now, if it's a bomb, is it still three people or is it like 300? Because, like, again, this term is retarded because it has no real definitional meaning when you say weapon of mass destruction. Again, a machine gun is a weapon of mass destruction. So, should we regime change everyone who has a machine gun? Probably not a good policy because, one, they have a machine gun or many machine guns. But it's another really stupid term that I thought about earlier this week and then just remembered. And let's think back to the weapons of mass destruction in regards to Saddam Hussein and the Second Iraq War. Because there is some bleed over, there's some similarities between Venezuela, because although not widely reported, Saddam Hussein offered up everything before the invasion in 2003. He basically said, what do you want? You can have it. It's all yours. It's all yours. I give up. And we said no. And Maduro in Venezuela, according to President Trump, gave it all up. He said, you can have it all. What do you want? And that's where we got the clip of President Trump saying, because he knows not to fuck with the United States, which is true. Now, the other side to that is, can we take whatever we're after without blowing people up? Because the other part is the second you start shooting at Maduro and trying to regime change him or overthrow him, whether by direct or indirect means, like CIA support for some rebels or something, you validate the things he's been saying. And so the people who were like moderately against him or didn't like him now are going to be like, hey, he wasn't lying. And now he's going to be more popular than ever. And so now you're going to have people in the streets wanting to fight us. But just remember, when we invade Venezuela, that this is much more important than any city or town that you ever drive through or visit. This is much more important than your dollar being secure, it being safe, it being valuable, it being uninflated, that your buying power being doubled instead of cut in half, that invading Venezuela is much more important than any sort of financial security that could ever be offered to you through a sound monetary policy and not funding the war machine globally. Just remember, it's because of Iran that your dollar doesn't go as far. It's because of Maduro in Venezuela that the price of beef is going up in the stores. Just remember, this has nothing to do with bad economic policy, a spending deficit, a Fed that issues money willy-nilly. It has nothing to do with that. The lack of a shared culture within the United States and us versus them mentality has nothing to do with horrific politicians. It has nothing to do with them. It all is Chairman G's fault. It is all Vladimir Putin's fault. It is all Maduro's fault. I don't know his first name. That's true. It is all Saddam Hussein's fault somehow still. Don't understand that. It is all the Palestinians and Hamas's fault. They did this to you. The Ayatollahs, they're guilty as sin as well. It's all of their fault that our money is not sound. It's all their fault that you can't afford the things you want to buy. It's all their fault that Social Security is basically bankrupt and we're probably going to have to fund it in perpetuity, even though none of us listening to this are ever going to be able to collect it, assuming you're in my demographic or younger, based on the YouTube results and what I see from Spotify, we're never going to get that money, but we're always going to have to pay for it. And we're going to have to prop it up through more quantitative easing and money printing, i.e., money issuance. But that is all the fault of Maduro. Just remember that. Just remember, Maduro caused all of these problems. And if it wasn't for that bastard Vladimir Putin, we could all retire at like age 55 without any government assistance and tons of money in our bank accounts. But because Vladimir Putin illegally, unprovoked invasion of the Ukraine, that all of us are going to have to work until we drop dead at the age of 85 at a job we don't want to be at because Maduro and drugs or something. Just remember, the Ayatollahs are all to blame for the Blue Jays being in the World Series. Thank you and good night.